Dear learner, this is the next class of the contemporary political thoughts, and this is the third lectures, that is theory or value, nature of the society, dialectical and historical materialisms, and other political ideas. Now come to the explains first of all things, that is the theory of value. When we talking about the theory of value, is a fundamental concept in economic and philosophy that deals with the understanding how and why goods and services acquire value. Various theory of value have been proposed throughout the history, reflecting different perspective on what determines the value of an object or service. Here is an overview of the major theory. The labor theory of the value. When we're talking about the theory value, that is the given by the Adam Smith and David Ricardo and Karl Marx. Concept. This theory suggests that the value of a good or service is determined by the amount of labor required to produce it. According to Marx, the value of a product is directly tied to the socially necessary labor times required to create it. In a classical economics, this theory emphasizes that labor is the source of all value. The next important things that about the theory of value, that is the subjective theory of the value. When we're talking about the subjective theory of value, that deal with the theory posit that value is not inherent in an object, but is determined by the importance an individual places on goods or service based on its ability to satisfy their needs or desires. The objective theory is foundational to the marginal utility theory, which suggests that the value of a good is related to the marginal utility or the additional satisfaction gained from the consuming one more unit of it. Next is that is the exchange theory of the value. When we're talking about the Adam Smith, Karl Mengers, this theory focus on the idea that the value of a good is determined by what it can be exchanged for in a market. It is closely related to the subjective theory, what emphasizes the role of market transactions in determining value. Next important thing, that is intrinsic theory of the value, that is talking about the Aristotle's in the concepts. According to this theory, certain things have value in themselves independent of external factors like labors or individual preference. This value is often tied to the morals or ethical considerations and is less about economic value and more about the inherent world. Marginal utility theory, when we're talking about the marginal utility theory, that is talking about the theory in a refinements of the subjective theory of value, which focus on how individual access the additional benefits, that is utility gained from the consumptions and extra unit of a good or services. Value therefore is determined by the marginal utility of the goods. Next is that is cost of production theory, that is given by the Adam Smith. When we're talking about the cost of production theory, this theory asserts that the value of a good or service is determined by the cost of the resources required to produce it, including labor, capitals, and raw materials. It is closely linked to the labor theory but include other factors of productions as well. Next is that is called the market value theory. That is the market value theory suggests that the value of a goods or services is determined by the integrations of supply and demand in a competitive market. Market value reflects the equilibrium price where the quantity supplied equals the quantity demanded. Next important things about that is value pluralisms, that is talking about the theory suggested here are multiples, sometimes conflicts value that cannot be reduced to a single measures or hierarchy. Value pluralisms recognize the diversity of value that people holds and the complexity of determining what is most valuable. Utilitarianisms, that means in ethics, utilitarianism is a theory of value that suggests the best actions is the one that maximize overall happiness or utility. The value of an action is determined by its consequences, particularly in terms of producing the greatest good for the greatest numbers. This theory provides different lanes through the which value can be understood, reflecting the diversity of thought in both economics and philosophy. This is important part of the theory of the value. Next is that is talking about the nature of society. That means the nature of a society is a complex and multifaceted concept that has been explored by the philosophers, sociologists, thinkers throughout the history. At its core, society reflects a group of individuals who live together in a more or less order community, sharing common institutions, customs, law, and value. Here is a deeper exploration of the nature of society. First important things that is talking about the collective and cooperative structures. That means society is fundamentally a collectively entire composed of individuals who interact with each others. The nature of these interactions is often cooperative as people work together to achieve common goals, fulfill needs, and solve the problems. For examples, in a society, individuals may be collaborate to build infrastructures, educate children, and maintain order through the law and governance. Second important thing that is called the social institutions and norms. A society is characterized by its institutions like structures like the family, religions, educations, governments, and economy that organize social life. Norms have accepted standards of behaviors guide the actions of individuals within these institutions. Examples: the institutions of marriage and norms of monogamy in many societies illustrate how social institutions and norms shape individual behaviors. Next important things that is shared cultures. When we're talking about the nature of the society, that is culture encompasses the beliefs, value, custom, language, and symbols that members of a society share. Culture is a key element that binds people together and gives a society its unique identity. Language, religions, practice, art, and culinary traditions are all aspects of cultures that reflect the shared heritage of a society. Social structures and hierarchy. When we're talking about the social structure and hierarchy definitions, society is organized into various social structures which include roles, status, and hierarchy. These structures define how power, resources, and responsibility are distributed among the member of the society. For example, social class, caste systems, and political hierarchy are examples of how society structures themselves, often creating divisions based on wealth, occupations, or lineage. Next is that is talking about the independence of the nature of the society. That is, member of a society are interdependent, meaning they rely on each other to fulfill various needs, economic, social, emotional, and physical. This interdependence is a key feature of social life as it drives cooperations and social cohesion. For example, in modern society, individuals depend upon the farmers for goods, teachers for educations, healthcare worker for medical care, illustrations the interconnections of the social roles. These are the important factors of the nature of the society. Six, that is called the dynamics and evolving nature definition. Society is not a static, it is dynamics and constantly evolving in response to the internal and external factor such as technological advancements, cultural exchange, economic change, and political developments. The shift from agrarian society to industrials and then the post-industrial society demonstrates how economy and technological changes can transform social structures and way of life. These are the important nature of the society. Next is that is called conflicts and consciousness. When we're talking about the conflict and consciousness, the nature of society involve both conflict and consciousness, while individuals and groups within a society may cooperate to achieve the common goals. They may be competitive to or come into conflict over resources, power, and different value. Examples: social movements and political revolutions are examples of conflict in society, while the establishment of law and demonstrate institutions reflect efforts to achieve the consciousness and social orders. Next is that is socializations and the identity definitions. That means talking about the socializations and identity. Society play a crucial role in shaping individual identity through the process of socializations. Socialization is the process by which individuals learn and internalize the value, norms, and customs of their society, which in turn shape their self-concepts and behaviors. For example, the family, schools, and peer groups are primary agents of socializations that influence a person's belief, attitude, and identity. This is the important things. Next is that is talking about the moral and ethical dimensions. Society are also defined by their moral and ethical dimensions, which dictate that which is considered right or wrong, just or unjust. These dimensions are often reflected in law, religious teachings, and social norms. The concept of justice, human rights, and social responsibility are central to the moral and ethical fabric of many society. Next, that is called the integrations of social cohesions. That is for a society to function smoothly, there need to be a certain level of integrations and social cohesions where members feel a sense of belongingness and shared purpose. This is often achieved through the shared value, collective rituals, and common goals. For examples, national holiday, cultural festival, community service project can foster social cohesion by bringing people together and reinforcing a sense of collective identity. This is very important parts of the natural nature of the society. Next is that is called the regulations and the control. Sorry, society establish mechanisms for regulating behavior and maintaining orders, often through the law, norms, and sections. These mechanisms help ensure that individual actions aligns with the collective's good and prevent chaos. For examples, legal systems, law enforcement, and social norms like the B are in a way which society regulate behaviors. Next important features of the nature of society that is diversity and pluralisms. Modern society are often marked by the diversity with people of different backgrounds, cultures, belief living together. Pluralisms refer to the recognitions and accommodations of this diversity within the shared social framework. Multicultural society like the United States, Canada illustrate how diverse groups can coexist, each contributing to the broader society while maintaining distinct cultural identity. In essence, the nature of society is a reflection of complex wave of relationship, institutional norms, and value that bind individuals together, creating a structures and of a cooperative environments in which people live, work, and interact. Society is a dynamics continuously shaped by the interactions of its members and changing external environments. This is the essence feature of nature of society. Next come to the important topic that is called the dialectics and historical materialisms. When we're talking about the dialectic and historical materialisms are key concept in the Marxist theory developed by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. These concepts provide a framework for understanding the developments of society, history, and material conditions that shape human existence. Here is an explanation of each one. First is that is dialectic materialisms. When we're talking about the dialectic materialisms, that is a philosophical approach that applies the principles of dialectic to the material world. It postulates that reality is composed of matters and that all phenomena, including thoughts, consciousness, and social structures, arises from the materials conditions. The dialectical method involve understanding the world as a complex dynamic systems where change occurs through the conflicts of oppositions, theses and antitheses, leading to their resolutions in a higher synthesis. The key components of the dialectic materialisms is that the belief that matter is the fundamental substance in nature and all the phenomena, including consciousness and social relations, are the results of material interactions. These stand in contrast to the idealisms which possess that idea or spirits are primary substance of reality. Dialectics, a method of analysis that various changes and developments as the results of contradictions and their resolutions. In dialectics materialisms, change occur through the conflicts of opposition forces leading to transformations of society and natures. And law of dialectics, dialectics materialism is based on the several key law. And first is that law of the unity and conflict of opposites. Every material phenomena contains contradictions and a struggle between these opposite drives changes. Law of the transformations of quantity into the quality. Gradual quantity change lead to the fundamental quality transformations and law of the negations of the negotiations. Change process through a process of overcoming meaning contradictions leading to the new stages of development. Applications. Dialectics materialism is used to analyze the social, political, and economic process. For example, Marxists use this approach to understand class struggle, the contradictions within the capitalist and historical development of the society. So these are the explanations of the dialectics materialism. Now come to the second important theory of the historical materialisms. When we talking about the historical materialisms, is a methodological approach to studying history and society. It asserts that the material conditions of a society mode of productions, the way goods and services are produced and distributed, fundamentally shape its social structures, political institutions, and cultural practices. According to historical materialism, history is driven by material forces, particularly the developments of productive forces and the relationship of the productions. The key concept like the base and superstructures. The society is a structure into two base, that is economic foundations including the force and relationship of the productions, and superstructures like the social, political, and ideological institutions that arises from the base. The base determines the superstructures, but superstructure also influences the base. Mode of productions. This refers to the way of society organize the productions of goods and services, including the force of productions, tools, technology, and labor, and the relations of productions, the social relations that organize productions, such as class relationship. Class struggles. Historical materialism emphasize the role of class struggle as the engine of historical changes. The conflict between different social classes, particularly between the ruling class, those who control the means of productions, and working class, those who sell their labors, drives the transformations of the society. This is the very key explanations of the historical materialisms. Now come to the stages of developments. When we talking about the stages of development, that means Marxists argue that society progress through the distinct stage based on the dominant mode of productions. Primitive communisms, that means classless communal society where the means of productions are commonly owned. Slave society is society characterized by the exploitations of slave as the primary labor force. Feudalism is society where land is the primary source of wealth and relationship between lord and serf defined as social relationship. Capitalist is society where capital, money, factory, machinery is the primary means of productions and relationship between the bourgeois and the proletarians is central. Next is that is called the socialism, a transition stage where the working class seizes control of the state and the means of productions, leading to the eventual establishment of communisms. And the communisms, a classless, a stateless society where the means of productions are commonly owned and wealth is distributed according to the needs. And this is the historical change. That means when we're talking about the according to historical materialisms, history change is driven by the developments of the productive forces, technology, labor, and resources, and the resulting contradictions within the relationship of the productions. These contradictions lead to the class struggle, which ultimately result in revolutions, change, and the transitions to new mode of production. This is very important part of the stages of development. Now come to the different kind of the political idea. We have the other political idea also. When we're talking about the political idea, that encompasses a wide range of concept, theory, and ideology that have shaped human society, governance, and the relationship between individuals and the state. Below some of the key political ideas that have influenced political thoughts and practice throughout the history. One is called the liberalisms, that is core principles. When we're talking about the liberalisms, that is individual liberty, political equality, rule of law, free markets, and limited governments. And the key thinkers like John Locke, John S. J. Mill, and Adam Smith. When we're talking about the liberalisms, is a political and economic philosophy that emphasize the protections of individual rights, freedoms, and often advocating for democratic governance and free markets capitalism. It support the idea that individuals should be free to pursue their own happiness provided they do not infringe on the rights of the others. Classical liberalism focus on the limiting government's interventions, while modern liberalism support a more active role of the state in ensuring social justice and addressing the economic inequality. This is called the basic definitions, yeah, basic explanations of the liberalisms. Other kind of the political idea that is called the conservatisms. In the conservatism, the core principle that is traditions, social stability, authority, hierarchy, cautions, and changes. Key thinkers like the Berkeley, Michael, and Rogers. Conservatism is a political philosophy that values traditions, established institutions, and social order. It advocates for maintaining the status quo or changing gradually rather than pursuing radical reform. Conservative often emphasizes the importance of family, religions, and the community as the foundations for a stable society. They also support a strong state to maintain orders, what generally prefer limited government interventions in the economy. This is the important features of the conservatism. Next, other political idea that is socialism. When we're talking about the socialism, that is economic equality, collective ownership, social justice, redistributions of wealth, and these theory are given by the Karl Marx, Friedrich Engels, and Rosa Luxemburg. Socialism is an ideology that advocates for collective or state ownership of the means of productions and the distributions of goods and service. It seeks to reduce or eliminate economic inequality by ensuring that wealth and resources are distributed more equitably across the society. Society argues that capitalism lead to exploitations and inequality, and they promote the idea of a planned economy where the needs of the community take precedence over the individual profits. Next is that is communism's core principles, classless society, abolitions of private property, communal ownership, key thinkers like the Karl Marx, Friedrich Engels, and Vladimir Lenin. When we're talking about the communism is a radical form of socialism that seek to establish a classless, a stateless society where all property is commonly owned, or Marxist communism is envisions of the eventual overthrow of the capitalism through the a proletarian revolutions, leading to establishment of a dictatorship of the proletariats, which will eventually dissolve a society. Transitions to full communism. In practice, communism has been associated with the authoritarian regimes that maintain a strict control over the economy and political life. Next important political idea that is called the fascism. Fascism is basically talking about the authoritarians, nationalisms, militarisms, and anti-communisms supremacy of the states. And these are basically fascism is a fair rights political ideology that promote a centralized authoritarian governments led by directorates leader. It emphasizes interests nationalists often combined with militarism and distincts for the liberal democracy and communism. Fascism glorifies the state above individuals' rights and support the use of violence and repressions to maintain social order and achieve national objective. It engaged in the early 20th century, most notable in the Italy under the Mussolini and Germany under the Hitlers. This is the fascism types of the governments. Next is that is called the anarchisms, and this is very important parts when we talking about the anarchism, that is anti-authoritarianism, statelessness, voluntary cooperations, and direct democracy. This anarchism is a political ideology that rejects all form of hierarchy, authority, and advocates for a stateless society based on voluntary cooperations and mutual aid. Anarchists believe that all forms of governments oppressive and should be abolished. They envisions is a society where individuals freely associate in self-managed, decentralized community. Anarchism can take various forms, including anarcho-communisms, anarcho-syndicalisms, and individual anarchisms. These are the important clarification of anarchisms. Other political idea that is nationalisms. When we talking about the nationalism, that is national sovereignty, cultural unity, self-determinations, and patriotisms. Overview, that means when we talking about the nationalisms is a political ideology that emphasizes the interest, cultures, and identity of a particular nations or group of people. Nationalists believe that each nation has the right to self-determination and should govern itself without external interference. Nationalism can be a unifying force, fostering a sense of rights and cohesion within the nations, but it can also lead to extraordinary or xenophobic policy as well as conflicts between the nations. Libertarianism's core principles, individuals' freedoms, minimum governments, free market, non-aggression principles like the Ayn Rand's, Robert Nogic's, these are the libertarianisms. Libertarianism is a political ideology that advocates for maximizing individuals' liberty and minimizing the role of states. And libertarians believe that individuals should be free to live their lives and they choose provided they do not infringe on the rights of the others. They support free markets, capitalists, and oppose most form of the government interventions in the economy and personal lives. Libertarianism emphasizes the protections of private property and voluntary exchange as the basis of a just society. This is very important part. Next is that is environmentalism, that is also called the green politics. That means when we are talking about the green politics, environmentalism or green politics is a political ideology focused on protecting the environment and promoting sustainable practice. It emphasizes the interconnectedness of human society and the natural world, advocating for policy that prioritize the ecological balance, renewables energy, conservatism, and the reductions of pollutions. Green politics often overlaps with the social justice concern seeking to address the impact of environmental degradations on marginal community and future generations. Next, kind of these things that is called the feminisms, that is core gender equality, women's rights, intersectionals, and social justice. When we're talking about the feminisms, that is a political or social movement that seek to achieve gender equality and challenge the systematic discriminations and oppressions of women. Feminists advocate for a women's rights in various spheres, including the political representations, economic opportunity, reproductive rights, and freedom from the violence. Feminism has evolved through different waves, each addressing different issues and explaining the to include international approaches that consider race, class, and other forms of the identity. Next is called we call it is social democracy. Social democracy basically relate to the social welfare, economic regulations, political democracy, mixed economy. And when we're talking about the social democracy is a political ideology that seek to combine the principles of socialism with democratic governance. It advocates for a big mixed economy where both a state and its private sector play a significant role in providing the service and ensuring economic stability. Social demonstrates support extensive social welfare programs progressive taxation, and government interventions to reduce inequality and protect worker rights while maintaining a commitment to democratic institutions and individuals' freedoms. Next is that is called the other kind of the political idea, that is populism. When we're talking about the populism, that is people-centered politics, anti-elitism, direct democracy, and nationalism. Populism is a political approach that seeks to represent the interest of the people against the perceived corrupt or out of touch elite. Populist leaders often claim to speak directly for the common people, positioning themselves against establishing political institutions and elite. Populism can be found across the political spectrums from right wing nationalist movement to the left wing anti-globalization campaign and often emphasize the direct form of democracy such as referendums. This is important clarifications of the populism. Next, when we're talking about the other kind of the political idea, that is called the republicanisms. And republicanism, that is civic virtue, the common good, oppositions of tyranny, and the rule of law. This, when we're talking about the republicanism, is a political ideology that emphasizes the importance of a government that is representative of the people and accountable to them, typically through a systems of elected representative and check the balance. It opposes the concentration of power in the hands of a single rulers or groups, or stress the importance of civic virtue and participations in public life is essential to the health of republic. Next is that is utilitarianisms, political utilitarianisms, that is core principle. The greatest happiness principles, consequently social utility, that means ki utilitarianism is a moral political philosophy that advocate for actions and policy that maximize overall happiness or utility. Political utilitarianism apply these principles to governance, suggest that law and policy should be designated to produce the greatest good for the greatest number of the people. It emphasizes outcomes and consequences over intentions and is often used to justify policy and promote general welfare even if they involve trade-offs. These are the important part. Next is, or that is the final other political idea, that is called the communitarism. Community value, social responsibility, common good, and civic engagements. These are the important aspects that each communitarism is a political philosophy that emphasizes the importance of community and social cohesion in shaping individual identity and ensuring the well-being society. It criticizes the excessive focus on the individual rights. Thanks, thanks for sharing these lectures. Thank you very much.